everybody out there in Cryptid Land. This is Patrick Perry, the host of the Cryptid Quest podcast, and my buddy Dirty over there. We're going to both bring you the most amazing stories from Juergen Hess from Hoodo Tall, which you can check out on YouTube. And tonight we're going to be talking about aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, and dinosaurs. So join us tonight on the Cryptid Quest podcast. Tonight,
no problem.
Tonight we have Juergen Hess on the Cryptid Quest podcast, and he's going to be telling us some amazing stories. And he's from the documentary Hoodo Tall. And I'm going to turn it over to him.
And you'll like to know that hopefully by October 1st, episode 2 of Hoodo Tall 2 should be posted, and that episode is focused pretty much on the footprints and cryptids and Bigfoots from the last 2 years. So episode 1 was just UFOs. You can go on YouTube and see that. Episode 2 now is going to be focused on the creatures. And there's a lot, it's wild because, when you start editing stuff together, you have to sit and look back at everything you've captured over the last few years. And it kind of blew us away how much there was when it came to cryptids. So I want to touch on all 3 subjects. I think we'll hit UFOs, Bigfoots, ghosts. But I'm also just about to submit my thesis to get my PhD in metaphysical science, specializing in anomalous research. And since I've written it, I'm less afraid to talk about it. I don't think somebody's going to try to take my idea that quickly. So I wanted to try to get into that because this has been my field work for 8 years now in order to build that thesis. So I kind of want to be able to share that if we could.
Hell yeah. Yeah. You share anything you want tonight, man. The stage is yours.
Ghosts. Let's try some ghosts first. So, the ghost thing I always thought was interesting. I never really went ghost hunting too much. It wasn't something I pursued a lot. We messed with a Ouija board when we were a kid, and it made a doll I had move across the room. And I think that was it for me for ghosts for a long time. And when I moved out here, I needed a job. I needed a way to sustain myself while I tried to investigate all the strange phenomena out here. And the first gig I landed was taking people ghost hunting in the town of Jerome. It's an old mining town, and it's probably the worst. The history of it's probably the worst I've ever heard. The town is literally paved with the remains of the people that lived there.
Oh, wow.
Quite literally.
So what state is Jerome in?
It's only 15 minutes from Sodona. I mean, I live in Cottonwood, which is right next to Sodona, between Sodona and Jerome. It's right there next to Sodona. Yeah, I mean, it's actually maybe 30 minutes from Sodona, but you can see it on the mountainside at night. It's an old mining town. And I did the math, over 1,000 hours giving tours and taking people ghost hunting. And when I took the job, I'd taken a ghost hunting tour in New Orleans, and it was fun. You walk around, somebody gives you history of different buildings, and they tell you stories, and it was a good time. So I thought that's what I'd be doing. It's everyone on the tour gets a spirit box or an EMF detector, and we go to 4 locations, 3 of which are private properties you can't get to publicly. And I never would have imagined. I mean, I gave tours for 6 months, 5 tours a day, 4 days a week. And never once did I give a tour without ghosts showing up and speaking to us and interacting with us. It didn't matter if it's 11 a.m. to midnight. Time of day didn't matter. And I tried to kind of figure out why ghosts are so prevalent in Jerome, aside from the trauma that happened there. And they used to mine copper there. And they took $1 billion with a B out of copper out of that mountain. And there's still more than that in the mountain itself. Copper is incredibly conductive. And it actually seems like that could be what's providing the energy source for so many of these things to exist there. Because, there's a lot of places where trauma's taken place and there's not outrageous levels of ghost activity in those places. So there's something something particular happening on that mountain. But you can go to Jerome with a spirit box and walk around town and they will speak to you. I mean, the ghost knew my name after like 3 weeks after I started. We'd turn on our spirit boxes and they'd say, "Hi, Jay, Jay, Jay." And it's like,
Oh,
all right.
that's so cool.
You could ask what color shirt somebody's wearing in the group. And they wouldn't always answer, but when they answered, they were always right. You know, the only one where it kind of threw me off is I was wearing a red polo shirt. And I asked them what color my shirt was, and they replied with blood, not red. But technically, yes, they're
That's a
still
little
correct. It's,
creepy.
it's the color of blood. And I feel safe suggesting it because around town, walking around the sidewalks and stuff, I didn't have anything ever that was very negative. One lady had a swear word said to her, but aside from that, honestly, mostly around town, it's very interesting stuff that you're hearing said. Now, in the private properties we had access to was a little bit different story. The Haskins apartment. There's all these tunnels under Jerome. They were used for smuggling, opium and alcohol and all this stuff. And they've all been filled in now, but this apartment had a tunnel going out of the closet. You could still see the caved-in tunnel there. And so somebody came out of the tunnel one time and shot the two people that lived there, one on the couch and one in the bathtub. Ruth and I think his name was Mike. And so I would go in there with people and we'd talk. Ruth was quite the entertainer. The funny thing was she would start asking me for very particular items. Well, actually, more specifically, very particular types of alcohol.
Oh, wow.
It started with vodka. And, thought, okay, I went to the store and I bought the little, $2 thing of vodka.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and I stashed it in the bathroom. And the next tour I came on a couple hours later, they wouldn't stop. They were so excited. Like I had a REM pod and put on the couch. Usually you got to ask a question and get them to light a particular light. This case, the REM pod was just swirling around with lights lighting up. Like everything was just crazy. And I was like, the alcohol gift really seemed to work with this group of spirits in here. And over the course of my tours, they had requested 7 different types of alcohol. I mean, like brandy, whiskey, tequila, all these particular things, gin, vodka, just about everything. And I would always bring it. And it got to the point where I felt like some nights if I was on the tour, not giving it, I would have been skeptical if it was real because the interaction with these things. So a good example is we'd come in and sit down and if I had given a gift recently, I knew they would be up for some parlor tricks. And so people would be like, "Is there anyone here?" And there would not quite any activity at first. So they're like, "I don't think there's any ghosts in this place." So I would just say, "Hey, if you're here, Ruth, can you open the bathroom door? Because we can all see that door from where we're sitting." And sure enough, she would fling the door open. And then I would say, "Thank you, Ruth. Can you close it?" And she'd go, bang, she would close it closed. And the funny thing, people would be really skeptical at first. And then I would tell them, "I want you to go over there and I want you to try to open that bathroom door." And they would all get weirded out, so they would all go and try. And the problem was the floor there is very warped. So when you open that door about 6 inches, it hits the floor and you can't actually open that door by yourself. But Ruth could open it fine, swing it open and closed. And I would ask her if she wants us to leave. She could open the front door and she would definitely open it if you didn't want you there that day. So that was really, it wasn't scary in the sense it felt threatened, but it was scary for people that didn't think ghosts were real.
Yeah.
And, suddenly there's this woman just, doing whatever she's asked to do. They did confess to being like this wild party group of swingers in the old town and all kinds of, I mean, that town had 80 brothels in this little tiny town.
Wow.
Yeah. Opium dens were like 17 of them. I mean, it was really, in its day, it was known as the modern Sodom and Gomorrah. Like in the newspaper said it was the most wicked town in the world in its day. So yeah, that's, it really was. And then the old high school. So after that apartment, I'd take them to the high school and then the old cemetery. And you would think the cemetery would be the scary place to go, and honestly, it wasn't. The high school was. After the high school, you get into the cemetery, you're like, oh, it feels so nice here. Like compared to that place, man.
Seriously.
And Yeah, the high school was used as a hospice during the Spanish flu in the early 1900s. So, I mean, loads of people died in the auditorium. Naturally, that's where I was taking people. And we would go up on the stage in there. And in addition to the stage, if people were kind of brave enough, I would take them into the basement where there's a boiler room, and there's a little apartment where two teachers could have lived. There's two bedrooms, a center room, and a little kitchen. And I was told when I started, hey, that kitchen down in the basement, mediums and stuff say something really evil happened in there, like rape or murder, something very bad. So they're just like, just be leery of that kitchen area. And so on the stage, we would generally have a good time. I did learn to play a game with them where I would bring a tennis ball on the stage and I would put it down and I'd get the tour around and I'd put the ball down and I would ask if anyone in there wanted to play ball because a lot of them were children. And, you'd get a yes a lot of times. So I'd put the ball down and I would put my EMF detector on the ground next to the ball because they weren't strong enough to push the ball, but they were strong enough I could see they were trying to push the ball. So once you ask them, suddenly your EMF detector next to the ball starts surging like crazy, and you can tell they're really trying to use their energy to push the ball, but they couldn't do it. But that was still another way to try to see if the phenomena was there. If we didn't have EMFs on the ground, you think nothing pushed the ball, there's nothing here. So I did, try to use that as a way to investigate or learn how to really interact with this phenomena. Um, it was really cool that I was a professional ghost hunter. Like I got paid. Like that kind of blew my mind, honestly, for a while. Like my high school counselor never
What a
said
better
that was.
job than that, right?
Right, right, right. Um, but honestly, it changed me as an individual. I mean, I spent that many hours. And in fact, I was spending all day with ghosts more than people. Aside from that, I was living and working on a ranch as a ranch hand. So it was with animals or with ghosts all day long. And it wasn't bad. Uh, but, I needed to get a proper job at some point. That was the main struggle. To stay in this area, you need to find a place to live and a way to support yourself. So it was good and it was a lot of fun. I think I'm a little too old. It wear on my body a little bit, running around town all day, every day, and stuff like that. But I ended up getting a job as a brewer for a kombucha company, which has been like the coolest job I've ever had. So yeah, it worked out really well being out here. And ghosts or Bigfoots or UFOs? I want you to pick the next.
All right,
They're
so
kind of intertwined, but
yeah, and I'm on the same page as you.
Mhm.
I have a lot of theories. I don't know which one's right because nobody really knows.
Right.
But I'm gonna go UFOs.
Nice. Well, the one thing I can tell anyone listening is if you are interested in UFOs or if you're questioning them and their existence, if their existence is at all a question to you, make your next vacation to Sedona. You get to see them every night as long as it's not cloudy. And that sounds crazy, but I mean, I have 200, 300 videos just on my cell phone of them as I film through night vision.
So can I stop you for 1 minute, man? On your documentary, Hoodo Tall,
Mm-hmm.
I saw the point where you were looking up at the sky and there'd be one, two, three, four,
Yeah.
and you were pointing at them with I guess a laser light. I
Yeah,
think
laser pointer.
laser pointer, and I'm like, oh my god! I'm like, look at all these things. I'm like, it blew my mind, and I believe in UFOs, and it blew my mind. So I didn't mean to
And
cut you off, but I had to throw that
why
in there.
not? Cut me off anytime because I can tend to go on and on
No,
talking
no,
about
it's
big.
all good. That's the point.
uh, and on YouTube now for free, it's all going to always be free as long as I can. But the Hoodo Tall 2 episode 1 just has UFO footage since I moved here. And there was this theory I had, which was, I would come here on camp trips every year. And originally I did come here the first time specifically to try and see UFOs. So growing up, I had a pretty normal life until I got to the age of 24. And all this weird stuff just started happening. And man, I couldn't explain any of it or figure it out. And I kind of just felt like I was going crazy. You know, weird things in my room in the middle of the night. Just a lot of unrelated things I couldn't quite explain. I mean, I had spent my whole life growing up camping. Every summer, my parents took us camping. Spent so much time in the woods and never seen anything. Never once. I've camped in 48 states. I've never seen anything weird. So, as much as I believed in Bigfoots and UFOs, never have I seen it. But my strange experiences, I needed someone to talk to about it. And I found this guy named John Lear. You know, John was like one of the first people to come out and talk about UFOs. He's the guy who brought Bob Lazar into the public eye. In fact, the way John told his story, he's the reason Bob Lazar even went to work at Area 51 in the first place.
Oh, wow.
And I became really good friends with John. You know, he's like a mentor to me for like 15 years. He lived in Vegas, and I'd drive out to Vegas and just sit with him at his house and talk for hours and hours and hours about everything, the moon, 9/11. Because so John was a pilot, so he had a lot of knowledge about airplanes and things like that. And so I kind of got to the point where I stopped trying to come up with my own theories and was like, listen, I don't know. Listen, I'm never going to know. But I need someone who I can learn from so I can try to understand this at some point. And John was that person for me. You know, it started, I would hear him on Coast to Coast and things like that. And eventually I just tracked him down and went to his house like a creep and offered him some good cigars. And he's like, hey, come on in, let's sit around. And I was like, okay, good. You know, so, luckily John took me under his wing like he did, and he taught me a lot of things. And, you know, all those years sitting and talking with John, I knew UFOs were real because this guy wasn't lying to me. You know, it's just me and him in his house. He just wanted to share what he had. And it got to the point where I wanted to see one for myself. That was it. I have to see one. And Sodona was the place. You know, I got the idea to come here from the Rendlesham Forest incident. It listed coordinates of special places, and Sodona was the closest one to California. And the first time I came, I went on the UFO tour. You know, they give you night vision goggles. And I'm telling you, in a 2-hour time frame, you're going to see 80 to a couple hundred of them. And that's why when people say, maybe they're ours, you know, maybe it's the military that just have really advanced craft. And I'm like, not this many. They don't, honestly. They couldn't be. And, you know, as I come on camp trips, you know, the first trip I came, we saw some UFOs. Second trip, saw some more intricate UFOs. My fourth trip, I couldn't get anyone to come with me.
Man, you should call me.
Well, it's funny because I'm coming camping, right? And then I'm like, you know, I'm asking my friends, hey, you want to come camping? We're going to go watch UFOs fly over us and then go to sleep in a tent. And they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. They're like, that's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Like, so I came out by myself. And it was when I started coming out by myself that this new concept of maybe if they get more familiar with me, I can have more and closer encounters with them. You know, I didn't have an idea what this was. You know, John was able to lead me to a place to encounter him. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago. But
I'm sorry.
He did give me his source of information, the person he found that he trusts with information. And he did connect me with that person. So I do still have a good source of info when I have really difficult questions. And, you know, when you come out here, you can see anything. You'll constantly see orbs of light going through the night sky silently, brightest lights in the sky. Often enough, you'll see them in pairs of 2, 3. I mean, we've seen formations up to 12. I've gotten videos of triangle formations and a formation of 5. And in Hoodo Tall 2, episode 1, which you can watch on YouTube now, that's a collection of videos, and man, it got so weird out here. I'll tell people what's in it. You can go see it. It's so as this kind of, you know, bonding experience as I was mentally thinking of it was going on, I had to try new ways to try to embrace these things. This was going on with the Bigfoots too, which when we get to that, it's the same process. And so one night I'm filming the craft, and there's a couple other people next to me who do not have night vision on. I'm the only one with it at the time, and I have my camera hooked to it. But the couple next to me, they're talking about whether or not they think that ETs or UFOs want to consciously connect with us. And I thought, okay, that's, you know, that's kind of the path I'm going down to, you know, that this is a consciousness thing. And so I'm filming a craft when I said it, and I just simply ask the craft audibly on camera, flash really bright if you want to connect with us. And bang, it flashes really, really bright. Actually, that footage was just on Discovery Channel on the
I
show Alien
saw it.
Encounters Factor.
I saw
Yeah,
it.
oh, you
I
did? Yeah,
did.
yeah,
When
yeah.
you said flash,
Yeah.
flash if you want to connect, and it flashed. I saw that episode. I didn't realize it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
you.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that
And
was crazy. I was like, oh my God, look at this. It
yeah,
did it
so
right
that's
on your
not even the
command.
best. Yeah, that's not even the best footage of them answering my
Holy
questions.
cow.
In episode 1 of my sequel, you can see the next sequence was insane, man. So I was out there another night and I'm filming a craft. Once again, nobody else had night vision at this point. I'm filming this thing and I see it make a bright flash. And so I thought to myself, okay, that one I'm filming has the capability to flash brightly. So I was like, oh, okay. So I wanted to watch it first. First, I wanted to see if it was making it at a regular interval. Because if it's a piece of metal or an object rotating or spinning, it's going to flash at a given interval, you know.
Yep.
And I've seen it plenty of times, you know, every
Yeah.
7 seconds. Well, this one wasn't doing that. It made that bright flash and then went back to being dim and just flying along. And a little while later, it kind of made another one. So I thought, okay, this one can flash. Seems like it's looking at it's trying to get my attention. And so, like, this was such a dumb thing to do. Like, I wouldn't do this again if I thought about it. Like, I would have thought of a better question. But in the moment, you're kind of just, you know,
Yeah.
wrapped up in it. So I'm filming it and I'm like, flash if you know who I am. Okay, so the reason I say it's dumb is because, well, that doesn't really make any sense. I'm not anyone, you know. I mean, like, it was more of like a soulful thing, like, you know, if they know who I am, like a person on a path of developing consciousness or maturing your soul, you know, it was like that. Well, the second I ask that, it flashes really bright. And I'm like, whoa. And I say, do it again. And bang, it does it again. And I stop. I'm like, okay. I kind of ask it a couple other questions and it doesn't really do anything. And then I say, can you come back in a formation? And it bang, yes. And I said, okay, can you please fly back in a formation of 2? And it bangs and then it disappears. And then the next clip of video is about 90 seconds later. This thing came back as 2, but the most impressive double I've ever seen because it was a full moon out that night, so it was hard to see craft as it was. But this thing was so bright. Both of them were so bright. The people without night vision and the full moon, it was clearly obvious in the sky. I mean, flying by the moon, you could see these giant balls of light just cruising by. In the video of it, you can see the reflection, like the flare from the moon in the camera. Like, that's how bright the moon was. It was remarkable how big and bright it came back when it came back as a pair. Yeah, and that footage is in there. Yeah, you're gonna really, really dig it. It's kind of crazy to see.
So where is that? Where'd you say that footage is?
It's on YouTube. If you look up Hoodo Tall 2, I only have
2?
the first episode up right now.
I actually, you know what? I was on there this afternoon. I saw Hoodoo Tall 2 was up, but I didn't watch it yet.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's on
that
that?
episode.
Okay, so we'll share both the links with the podcast.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can give me the Discovery show that it was on, because I remember watching it, but I don't remember what episode it was, what it was.
Yeah, it's Alien Encounters Fact or Faked, episode 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So.
So the UFOs, you know, they're not aliens from another planet that evolved on their own to the point where they developed interstellar craft and flew through space to Earth to see what humans are. Like, it's really isn't that. And it couldn't be that with as much of it as there is. You know, and you know, if I know some people like have a hard time grasping onto that, but when you think about it, if there are beings on a planet, you know, hundreds of thousands of light years away or a billion light years away, and they look at Earth, they're going to see us a billion years ago. If they looked at Earth, they would see dinosaurs walking around. They wouldn't even have seen humans walking around here anyway. So they wouldn't have seen us and thought, oh, let's go see those humans. So, you know, these are things that are, and this start kind of explaining my thesis for my doctorate and what it involves. I start to call these things the fringe effects of the Earth experience. And I really feel like all these things are kind of these effects that we're probably not supposed to notice or pay attention to. They're there because there's a massive infrastructure behind the veil, I guess, you know, that helps run a planet of 7 billion people. Like, I don't know if you ever worked in manufacturing. I can imagine what that would take to run a planet of that many souls. And people, you know, not everyone will agree that we have a soul. So, you know, if somebody hasn't really gotten to that step, then my thesis is going to get thrown out the window with them, and that's fine. You know, I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm simply trying to put a process to practice in the field and share the results from that process. And that's what I've been doing out here when it really kind of comes down to it. It just so happens the process has been working. And honestly, I didn't think it would. I didn't think it would, man. Like,
well,
because,
that's why you got to keep trying.
Yeah, you know, and so another cool thing recently, near the Bradshaw Ranch up on a hill nearby, I'm 99% sure a craft landed there. I found this giant burned circle in the dirt. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not like really grassy or anything up here. This thing burned a tree to the ground. And I have measurements and video of the whole thing. So the tree trunk measured 6 feet across. So it was a large tree. Yeah. That tree trunk there was only maybe 6 to 10 inches of the tree trunk left off the ground. It was burned to the ground. The circle measured, I think it was 26 feet by 28 feet, almost perfect circle, slightly oval. And the wood from the tree was dispersed evenly in the circle in really small, about the same size pieces. And that stuff was like so hard and like it experienced a lot of heat from what we could tell. Any remaining large sections of the tree branches, they were all pushed to the outer edge of the burn circle. And so it really, really looked like there was some sort of pressure that would have distributed the ashes and pushed the big branches out to the side. But the weirdest part about the whole thing is there's a tree adjacent to that one, and its dead tree branches come right up to the edge of the burn circle, and they're not burned. I cannot explain how a fire could do that. How could a fire,
maybe
say
if
a
it
lightning
was given
strike?
direct force straight down?
I mean, well, I don't think a lightning strike or a natural fire, because that's I got to try to debunk myself right away. Okay, what could this be that's natural? And I'm telling you, I've brought loads of people there and shown it to them, like, how could a fire do this? And nobody can explain how a fire could do that. So we brought a Geiger counter. I brought one of those. That was cool because I've never used one of those before. But the radiation in the circle is double double the surrounding area, and triple other areas on the property.
But see, the thing is, we don't really know what alien technology is, and maybe a craft landing.
Plasma. Yeah, exactly right. No, I think it was some unknown thing. Maybe, plasma or some sort of thing like that. And there's another kind of reason to back that up, where there's a force coming down from it. And the couple months after we found it, I keep going back to check on the burn circle, and a couple months later, it had tremendous growth in it. I mean, there were no like grass or flowers growing anywhere else, but within the circle, it was 1 foot to 2 feet tall of growth just in the circle. And so that was really strange, And as I thought, okay, a fire could add nutrients to the soil, breaking down the tree and stuff. So it's not, completely out of the realm of normal, but it was very bizarre.
Very bizarre, but especially in that climate.
Right. And this isn't a place there's not a path to, I just happen to be walking up on a random hillside in the middle of nowhere to find it. So it's definitely not hoaxed or anything like that. But the force coming down, I didn't really make this connection till you brought it up right now. So there's another spot out here of petroglyphs. Now, this is the first place I encountered a Bigfoot. So they're still down in this area, and there's carvings of them all through this creek bed. So they've been there a long, long, long time. And there's a carving down there of a saber-toothed cat. So this stuff is going back 10,000 years. And in that location, I found a site that kind of weirded me out a bit, and I found it. So I'm really trying to get better at deciphering my intuition versus just my creative brain. Like if you're out hunting for Bigfoot, it's natural for you to think every sound is a Bigfoot. That's not the case. So,
No, that's true.
Yeah. So, I try to really kind of keep an open mind, but not so open that my brain falls out of my head. There's a certain amount of open I'm trying to leave it at. And, when I was walking through this creek bed and I was looking for something that would help me on my personal journey, my kind of like my soulful growth, this desire to mature my awareness and become more than what I am, all that type of thing. And as I'm walking, I look over and I see a hole in a rock. And I was like, okay, that's not normal. Holes don't form in rocks. So I walked over there and I could see the carving stones and all these other things. I was like, okay, there are people here. And then on the walls there are all these petroglyphs carvings. Now it wasn't until I met a Native American named Cliff Mahooty. He's been on Ancient Aliens and things like that. He unfortunately passed away too, but he was able to explain the things I saw. And there's two carvings there of a sky person. And there's a carving of him coming out of a ship. But one of the carvings of the sky people, he has his hands out, and the double helix of DNA is coming out of his hands down from the sky. And this place just was so fascinating to me. I was like really kind of drawn to it. Both carvings of sky people have a handprint from the sky person in old red paint next to them, as if to prove these giant tall people came to visit the natives there. They left their physical handprint in paint. So to me, this place was like kind of remarkable. I mean, you don't get to see alien handprints often,
No.
It's really creepy when it matches. Like, so the funny thing was, I put my hand on it and it matched my hand, like every nook and cranny. And it was kind of like, yeah. So I wanted to find out more, and I thought I would try to get someone to remote view the place. I know remote viewing is a real thing. I didn't really know anyone at the time, but I made a blind target, a random 6 letters and numbers that I mentally associated with the place, and I posted it in the remote viewing section of Reddit. I figured there's no harm. If somebody's on target, I'll know it. If they're not on target, they just post and, who cares? So I was reading through the replies, and oh man, this one guy was spot on target. I was kind of taken back. He was describing the terrain exactly. I was in a creek bed, and it's very flat and has very straight walls. And he's like, God, it's weird. The terrain there is U-shaped. And I'm like, whoa, keep going.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's like red everywhere. And I'm like, the rocks are red. He's
more.
like, yeah. And then he's like, I smell. He's like, Reese's Pieces, and I literally had them in my pocket that day when I was out there shooting. So like, it was like, I'm like, dude, you're on the target. I was like, okay, go back. I was like, you're on the target now. Can you go back to when the people that made that stuff were there? And can you remote view that? And he said he will. He couldn't do it at the moment, so he came back to me like the next day. And he shared his notes with me and everything that he saw in the process. And when he started out, he was saying like, oh yeah, he's like, there are people there. He's like, yeah, they're, a little over 5 feet tall. They're human. They look like Native American people. And I'm like, And he said they're concerned. And he said, no, I don't know if concerned. He's like, there's something giving them maybe some anxiety. Something is different. And he said, there's a spiral coming out of the sky down toward them. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. You know, there's a carving there, there's a twist coming out of a guy's hands.
Oh
And he
wow.
said,
Oh yeah.
energy, and he described it as like an energetic force coming out of the sky down onto them. And then he said he looked up into the sky and he's like, oh no, there's two silver discs in the sky above this place. Now, this person had no clue of the petroglyphs or anything I had seen. The blind target could have been a hot air balloon, you know,
Yeah.
but he literally described the same thing the petroglyphs seem to say happened there, that these people that lived there were visited by people in a sky shield, they called them. But these encounters are never aliens from another planet. These people always say they're gods. The god, you know, you look back to so many ancient cultures, where did they get their initial spark of intelligence from, or their, you know, that moment that brought them from, you know, living in nothing to having some sort of technology, you know, like the Mayans and the Inca and everyone. And they say, you know, that, yeah, these guys with beard either came from the ocean or came from the sky, and they taught us stuff. You know, Viracocha. You go to many places around the world and have this really bizarre, similar story of that kind of thing. Uh, some of it might be people from coming from a UFO craft. I think some of that was also maybe I think there were a lot of higher level civilizations on Earth, like we refer to as Atlantis. I think that's just a generalized name to describe the type of civilization that was probably around before the Ice Age ended, the Younger Dryas. I think that when the ice melted and the places those civilizations were are now underwater, some of those people probably escaped the catastrophe of the flood and shared with other primitive civilizations on the planet how to build things, because you know we used to know how to build stuff out of 1,000,000-pound rocks and then we forgot. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that doesn't make
How'd that
sense.
happen?
It's just like, yeah, we don't know how to do that
Yeah.
anymore.
I forgot my notes
So,
at school.
right. And so the UFO stuff, you know, I really wondered what it is. You know, what what are these? Why are there so many? What are they? Why are they so different? And I think the best way I can describe them, after, sounds weird enough, but being on them, you know, being close to them, videotaping them, all that stuff, they are the portal. UFO is a stargate or a portal with a room built around it, basically. You know, I've seen a lot of theories about, including the Rendlesham Forest incident. There's special places on the planet. That's literally what led me here. But the more you look into Rendlesham, you know, the translation of the binary code might not have actually listed those coordinates. So regardless, it led me to a place where I could see UFOs. But you know, I've heard people say they only appear in specific areas on the planet because those are portal areas, and that there's a portal in that part of the planet that these things come and go from. And I don't think that's accurate. Even if you look at the science behind how the craft work, or you know, you look at what Bob Lazar said, or anyone who could describe it, they manipulate gravity, they manipulate space-time. You know, that's what we say a portal is, right? It's a
Yeah.
connection between two places. And well, that's what a UFO literally is. You know, it grabs space from over there, bends it, and goes with it. The craft is a portal. And
That makes a lot of sense.
right, and so hopefully we can start to try and comprehend who's coming through. You know what, the craft themselves are really entertaining. I will never get
So,
tired of watching them.
so
But
I,
who's on them?
I got a okay. I got a question.
Yeah.
Do you think, for one, do you think the people or beings on these crafts
Hmm.
are indicative to us or related to us in some way in the distant past? Do you think they put us down
Right.
here? And I also got another question. I keep hearing about pyramids in like Antarctica, or
Right. Right.
do you have any theory on that?
So I think there is a lot under the ice in Antarctica. That is a continent. And, you know, it's been covered with ice as long as we can remember.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always. You know, it was a thriving continent that I'm sure it was a jungle at one point. You know, the Earth has changed so much. There has to be stuff there. If we look at, I don't think there's probably not a continent on the world where there aren't pyramids, you know, in some form or another. So I would have to think there are some there.
Yeah.
The shock value comes from we think human civilization started 10,000 years ago when the Ice Age ended, and I don't think that's the case. I think everything before that is buried, you know, how many miles under mud from the flood. And the flood thing sounds really biblical, but it is something that happened. You know,
Yeah.
during the Younger Dryas, the ice melted very rapidly, maybe as quickly as like a couple days,
Oh, wow.
and catastrophically changed the planet.
Yeah.
So it was a giant reset. So, you know, we don't know the stuff before then. And I think there was plenty around before then for sure. Yeah, you know the Perry Reese map. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
So I mean, you know, he had the outline. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying he saw the coast of Antarctica, but he saw an old map that had it. You know, and we don't know what map that. You know, it's really hard to say, but he was accurate. So he must have gotten the information from somewhere. He didn't make it up. You know, like it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like, oh, I'll squiggle it. No, I was right. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't quite work that way. Uh, what was the question you had before
It
the?
was, do you think so the beings that are out
Oh,
there?
right, right, yeah, yeah. So I've heard that a lot. I've even wondered that myself. Like, are these just time machines? You know, and it's taken me a while to A, have enough experiences, B, meet other experiencers, C, root through the nonsense that's constantly pushed in your face about this stuff from people who want attention to kind of understand what the heck is going on. And here's what it seems like to me. And my opinion will change if I have the opportunity to change it. It seems like we are a soul that is a perpetual soul that exists probably eternally. And we incarnate in containers. And over those incarnations, our soul picks up this baggage, uh, insecurities, things like that, that make us less pure than we were the last incarnation. And we get to this point where we have a desire to exist on a certain level. And we realize we're not allowed to exist on the level we wanted to because of the inclusions we've accumulated. You know, like imagine that you're a diamond inspector, right? And you're like, oh, this one has a bunch of inclusions. It doesn't go into the vault of De Beers. It goes over here. We're like, well, I want to go in the vault of De Beers. And they're like, well, you better get rid of those inclusions if you want to go over there. And so we enter this agreement, like a soul contract, where we incarnate on a low level planet, a prison planet. And I say that word because it comes with existential amnesia. We don't even remember anything about, we barely remember the life we're living now, let alone ones that happened
Yeah.
before. You know,
100%.
but there's great evidence of, you know, especially children recounting their past life, you know, pointing out names of people and knowing
Yeah.
these people that are still alive. It's wild. So, you know, there's plenty of evidence to say that that is happening. So as we accumulate, we need to go down, we need to pay our dues to get rid of that. And that's why we come somewhere like this. And when you start to think about it, you're like, yeah, I mean, what does growing up mean, right? It means like maturing as an individual, you know, our brains, everything. And so when I started to get that idea, I was like, I need like a shining light to let me know what direction to mature. And John Lear and Lou Baldwin, they kind of told me, well, the ETs say you just got to learn to live with integrity and without envy, hate, or greed. And I was like, oh, that sounds easy. I was like, oh, that's kind of tough, actually.
Yeah.
When you
It
try to
is
do it,
tough.
it's pretty tough. But I needed to do that if I wanted to have stronger encounters. And so with all these years, that's what I've been trying to do. And, you know, that's what caused me to get chased down a PhD in metaphysical science. You know, along that process, it made me a reverend, counselor, a lot of things that I can offer to kind of ease the way of people I meet, which I think is important. Yeah, the path we're on Earth, it's where we go from here, like, isn't predetermined. And I think that's where humbleness comes in. And how we act in this life determines what happens to us in the next one. Most of us will just come right back to Earth. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Like this, you
Yeah.
can go around as long as you like, but other people have a desire, sometimes even a desire they can't even describe, that they don't even belong here in the first place. I can't tell you how many people I've met that just, and I don't even think they can say it, but they feel it. They're just
Yeah.
like, I don't even want to be on this planet. I'm like, yeah, none of us do.
Yeah.
But that's why we're not going to see peace on Earth, because the way you mature your soul is by being put through adversity. If you're living on a utopian level of existence where you live in a city and a planet where everything is perfect and free and everything is great, which those are there, that's where we get the concept of heaven. But if you live in that environment, it's incredibly easy to be a good person, right? Well, if you take one of those people and throw them in the gutter, Earth, that's when you find out if they're really a good person. How are you going to be when you don't have anything? When every day you're forced to fight just to scrape together what you think you need, and that's the Earth experience. So it's not going to become a wonderful, great place to live for a long time. I feel like Earth is evolving to that. Like, we can see it. The last 100 years have been mind blowing. And these UFOs, that's how beings that have already graduated and other higher level beings interact with us. They need a way to get here and back. And these are the little portals that they're using. I mean, there's a structure around it, but it's not a physical structure. You can see one that's 10 feet across on the ground, and then you go in it, and it's as big as an airplane hangar inside. Like, they're not what we think they are at all. They're really awesome. Yeah.
Would
I don't
you?
know. What do you think about that? I just spit a lot at you. What do you?
I'm digging everything you're saying. It's for real. I, you're throwing some theories out at me that I've not heard before, haven't really bounced around in my head, but it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of
And
sense.
that's what I wanted to do. I was trying to make sense of it, because all this started for me because weird things started happening to me. And man, it didn't make sense. And that
Yeah.
was the thing that it gave me like crippling anxiety for years, like afraid to go to sleep, afraid to wake up, like afraid to do anything because you don't know where the next weird thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's too much. Like, I
Yeah.
needed to make sense of it. And that was my way of finding out who was telling the truth. Because the collection of experiences I had, man, they were completely unconnected. They made no sense. It's not like I had a ghost visit me every night. It was always just some random. And I was like, if somebody's telling the truth, they'll make sense of this. Because the truth applies to everything,
Yeah.
And I don't knock religion at all, but when you ask a religious person, oh, why do babies die? And they're like, well, God's mysterious. That's not a fair answer.
No, it's not.
There should be a logical answer that
Yeah.
makes sense. So the truth would do that. And there was really the only person I know that's been able to make sense of it was this guy named Lou Bolden. And John Lear introduced me to him. John's gotten Lou to write books so that he could get it out there. But Lou has been able to tell me ridiculous concepts, and I'll put it into practice, and they work. And I'm like, okay, he keeps doing it. And it's really funny the way I've got into what Lou was saying, because I was at John Lear's house telling him all this stuff, like, John, I feel like I'm going crazy. And John was like, you need to read some of Lou's books. He's so calm all the time. Like, I'm sitting here spitting out all this crazy stuff, and John's just like, because he's heard it all before.
Yeah.
So I read 2 of Lou's books, and I read them in a sitting. Each book I sat there and just read through it in one sitting. And I go back to John's house, and I said, John, it's really weird, but I feel like Lou wrote those books just so I could read them. Like, and John let out this like big belly laugh, and he was like, "That's what I thought when I read him." He's like, "That's how you know he's telling the truth."
I got to
And the
check it
more I read
out.
his, yeah, the more I read his books, the more I was like, God, it just and he did it. He explained every bizarre experience I had ever had, and he had explained them in a way where it all made sense. I'm like, okay, this guy knows. So one of the things of his I tested, and I kind of bent the rules because I had my camera on, and the footage is in Hoodo Tall too, so you can go see it tonight. I asked Lou, how do I meet an ET? Right? I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I've seen UFOs. I'm really trying to get something going with an ET. Like, how do we do this? It's like, all right, I'll tell you. He said, you can't trick them. He said, they're all smarter than us. We're the dumb monkeys in the equation, basically. And he said, so you need to go somewhere remote. He said, you can go, miles and miles out into the woods. He said, you can go to like basement in an abandoned house in like an abandoned city. You need to go somewhere like that. And he said, and it also, you can't have the light switch within an arm's length of you. This can't be a trap. They know that and won't show up. They see the whole thing, and they're just like, this guy's a dummy. We're not gonna. And I said, all right. And he said, okay, so get to a place like that. It has to be dark. They don't want you to see them. He said, make it really dark. And he said, put your hands out by your sides. And he said, ask for them to show up. And he said, after 10, 15 minutes, one of them's going to come and grab your hand. And I was like, that's the scariest thing I've ever heard in my life. That's every horror movie I could ever, like, I was like, oh. I'm like, okay, but I mean, I'm the one who said I want to meet one. So what, I'm supposed to back off because I'm afraid to meet one now? Like, I can't contradict myself if I'm going to try to study this stuff. So I wanted to try it. And I was a little scared, so I did turn my camera on instead of holding my hand out. But I didn't think they would show up if I had my camera on. But it was so dark, you couldn't see them, but you can hear them. And man, I'm standing in the center of the old Bradshaw ranch house. And I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning, pitch black, no moon. And I have my camera on. And so you hear like boots. I mean, like clanging boots just stomping around. It makes my hair stand up just even talking about
Making
that
my hair
night.
stand up.
Yeah, but I got 2 clips of video of it walking around in the room around me. Man, it's just so gnarly. But it didn't try to freak me out.
That's in Hoodoo too, or
Yeah,
Hoodoo Tall
yeah,
too.
yeah. It's in the one
Oh
that's
my
already
gosh.
posted. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
It's
my gosh.
really, really, really
I
wild.
know what I'm
And,
watching when we get done.
yeah, yeah. And so what I wanted to do was break it up into episodes, like 30 minutes or so. So that one's about 30 minutes and just UFO stuff. I wanted to kind of provide footage in a little bit more categorized way this time. So maybe it's a little more digestible, but yeah, gosh, the UFO stuff is really interesting. And honestly, it, I put in this into practice, this theory that if you're trying to be a better person, mature your soul, elevate yourself, you will have more encounters with these things because that's why they're there in the first place. They're,
Trying to
can you think,
elevate
like,
us.
well, yeah, I mean, if we want to, it's like there, when you go to school, there's tutors available, you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean everyone, but,
Not
and is
everybody's
the
going to go
tutor,
to the tutor.
yeah, and is the tutor going to want to help the student applying himself to passing, or the kid who barely shows up to class? When the kid
Point.
applying himself comes to a tutor, they're like, yeah, oh yeah, we'll show up for you. So I had that. It's is that the same relationship we had? And I think that's the relationship we have with them. I don't necessarily think they're us from the past. I think they're us on a higher level than we are on currently. Now that doesn't mean they live on Earth in a different dimension. I don't think that. I think that they live in wonderful, fantastical realms that we can't even comprehend uh, where we are right now, but that most of us have probably existed in before. Like we've probably ourselves lived on those higher levels. We ourselves have probably been guides for other souls along the way. And right now, in our big circle of, journey of our soul throughout all the time. Right now, all of us on Earth are just at a point where we all realize there were things about us we wanted to work on and get rid of and better in a certain way. And we come to a school like this one.
So I want to know your thoughts on, because this might have to do with, because earlier you were saying how certain cultures thought of the beings from the stars as gods, and what's your thoughts on Nephilim? Do you have any?
Well,
Is that a bad subject?
no, not really. Indifferent, honestly. I think there are larger beings. I think over the course of humanity, we've given them all sorts of names, and it depends on what part of the world you're in,
Yeah.
what name they got.
Okay.
Just like in Spain, they don't call it an apple. And so I don't think that the Anunnaki story is genuine. Well, it isn't genuine. I mean, Zachariah Sitchin taught himself in his apartment how to translate ancient Sumerian texts and publish the story he thought they told. In no way is that fact. And it has been proven wrong repeatedly and repeatedly. The ancient Sumerians aren't prisoners of aliens mining gold. I promise you that. And if you want proof of that yourself, do some researching and you'll find that gold is everywhere in space. Space is loaded with gold. So why would aliens fly through space full of gold to a big rock and then take on the challenge of developing a race of beings to dig the gold out of the rock when they just flew past it? So, and that's because when Zachariah Sitchin was writing the story, he still had, it was still based on human Earth ideas. Gold is essential. You leave the planet, no one cares about gold anymore. So I think they're
100%.
giants.
You just made a very, very, very cool fact.
Okay, giants, definitely. There were absolutely giants on the planet, and the wildest account of them to me, because it has evidence, are the ones in Lovelock, Nevada. So in Lovelock,
Oh, I love that.
yeah. I mean, the natives there told stories for generations, right? No, they're red-haired giants living in the caves,
and they
we lit them with
excavated.
arrows and burned them up.
They excavated the caves and they found sandals that were, I think, 18 inches long.
Oh, better than that. They found the duck decoys that the giants made to hunt ducks. And they're in a museum. You can go to the Lovelock Museum and see the relics of the red-haired giants.
I didn't know about that.
Now I asked if you could see their skulls, because I wanted to see those skulls, man. And they said, nope.
Yeah.
But I did talk to the curator. So the curator of the museum said the skulls of those giants used in air quotes, right? 6'3", which was giants to people 5 feet tall. But the skulls of those giants, they said, there's not 2 rows of teeth. You can't fit a regular person's jaw inside. The internet pictures are fake. She did say they are what they say they are, but you cannot see them unless you're an anthropology student. That's the only people that can go down to the basement and see the skeletons. But yeah, I mean, they actually found the giants. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Who are these light-skinned, red-haired, 6'3" tall people living in America at that time?
In the middle of the desert with all the Native Americans.
Yeah, I don't know what year the natives said that happened, but I mean, there were Vikings in the U.S. I don't know that they got that far west, but wouldn't that be crazy if those ended up being like Nordics that were just like out of place?
Yeah. So, actually, bringing us up to another subject, one of my favorites is Leif Erikson, when he landed, said that they were chased off or encountered great hairy beasts that shrieked and stunk and were throwing rocks.
Isn't that wild? Christopher Columbus, in his reports, I think reports UFOs out on the water too. Someone in the crew, they had this lights in the sky.
Didn't know about that.
Yeah. Looking at there is, I can't remember the specific details, but there is something to that they had sightings on the ocean and on his ships. And the other funny thing I heard was that somebody was saying like, God, what did people like, in colonial America do when they didn't have, or what did the women do when they didn't have Bigfoot podcasts to listen to? And then somebody found a story that said about colonial women that said they used to gather and wash clothes and speak of rumors of hairy woodland men. I'm like, oh, but dude,
The first
leave
podcast.
alone.
That's awesome. That's
I thought that
hilarious.
was so good.
Thank
I
you
thought
for
that was
that
so
one,
funny.
man. I never heard that before, but
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's
I was
awesome.
dying when I heard that. So you want to talk about Bigfoots a little bit?
Yeah. That's honestly, hey, I'm gonna be honest with you. You really got me like way intrigued with the UFOs now. Like,
I'm telling you, you want to come out. Good. Let me know when you're coming. I'll take you out to see UFOs. It's not,
perfect.
yeah,
We're gonna do
yeah,
it. We're gonna do it.
yeah.
But
Because I can guarantee the Bigfoots are a little sneakier than the UFOs.
well, yeah, I this is the reason I started the whole podcast because I've encountered everything, ghost, UFO, but not the way you have, Bigfoot. But the Bigfoot was the scariest thing I ever encountered.
Yeah.
So, I I want to hear about what
Well,
you have to say.
I want to hear about your encounter first, real quick.
Oh yeah, well I was hunting in a deer blind. Gonna make it quick and short. Um, I was out in the middle of the woods. Uh, it was nighttime. wasn't supposed to really be out there. I was sleeping in my deer blind, waiting for morning, and I was just going to do my evening hunt, my morning hunt, all at the same time. And then if I saw something in the middle of the night, I was going to pop it. 2 a.m. I got
Yeah.
woke up by what sounded like a silverback gorilla, and it was right behind me. And then it went from sounding like a silverback gorilla to it started circling my blind. It started howling. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And then it started doing what I call a demonic chatter. And a lot of people have said is the samurai sounds, or this,
Yeah.
and a lot of that you can hear on the Sierra sounds. It's like,
Right.
and then when it started doing that, I started praying to God that I'd make it
Yeah.
out of
We've
there
been calling
alive.
them Star
What?
Wars noises too. We've been calling them like they sound like kind of like a Star Wars character when
Yeah,
they do
yeah,
that. Like,
yeah.
like
Yeah,
it's just kind of,
but at two
but it's a
o'clock in
language.
the morning, I was scared as f, and I had a crossbow with one arrow in it.
Oh yeah.
So
Um, I recommend not engaging. If anyone encounters a Bigfoot out there, don't.
I didn't
Yeah,
want
don't
to.
try to engage them.
Yeah, I didn't want to.
But they can disappear. I mean, they disappear right in front of you, so you're not going to shoot it. I promise you that.
Good. I didn't want to.
Yeah. So I the last thing I thought I would encounter out here was a Bigfoot. This is the Arizona mountains. It's 115 degrees in the summertime, and it was in the summer on the solstice, the first time it happened. And I was in the creek bed where there's carvings of it. All those crazy carvings I found are on the same creek bed. And I was down in there. And it was the first day I was in there. And I went down there to look for a spiral petroglyph, and I looking all over, found some stuff, but I looking more, and I had finally found the saber-toothed cat, and across the creek bed from the saber-tooth is a carving of Bigfoot. And they carve its footprint next to it, so it's not even like a debate. I'm like, oh yeah, there's somebody twice as tall as the people and a giant footprint next to its foot. I gotcha. And I'm looking there at it, and that day it was super hot, and I was out of water, and I just kind of hit that moment where I was like, oh crap, I still have to hike all the way back to my car. I'm out of water, and I was already getting like sick from the heat, and like, okay, my God, I was like, all right, calm down, just walk back to your car. So I like, okay, get my pack on, turn into the wind to walk back, and I smelled it, and I panicked, man. I smelled that foul, rank, like burning hair, dead body, tire fire, all mixed together smell. And I was like, oh boy. And I was like, all right, all right. I was like, not everything's Bigfoot. So, just walk in the way you walked out. Look for anything. Maybe you'll see a skunk, something that can explain the smell. There was nothing. And I got back to my starting point, and my intuition was like, go a little further. I go a little further, and then 20, 30 feet, whatever it was, off to the left there is the best, I mean, the best primate track I could possibly ever find. I could put my size 12 hiking shoe inside of it. And it was, you know, an inch deep, an inch and a half deep. And there was its knuckle print next to it. So it took one step with its foot and knuckle. And it followed me for like over 100 yards through this creek bed, dead silent. Couldn't hear anything. And this creek bed's full of rocks and dry leaves. You cannot move through the creek bed silently. I mean, not something that weighs 800, 900 pounds like footprints suggest. So I started getting skeptical that these are monkeys. There's no way.
I know, right?
No way there's a gorilla in Sodona, the Sodona Mountains. Like, there's not. I'm sorry.
No.
There's not a family of wild gorillas living out here. It can't be. Like, they can't be monkeys. Like, there's no way. I was really, because I was getting so much UFO stuff, and then, you know, a Bigfoot followed me, and I'm like, come on. Like, there's no. And it just got so much more than that, too. And I was weirded out at that point. It got way more. So they started coming through my campsite. You know, I would stay in the same place every year on the creek, and 5 of the 8 times I stayed there, it would come walking through my campsite in the middle of the night. That's what eventually led me to the Bradshaw Ranch. I needed to find some information on Bigfoot in Sedona, and you know that's the only place really had anything written about it or anything. And that's what led me to the ranch. And I've wondered over the last few months if the Bigfoots got my attention so that I would find the ranch. Like, is there, you know, were they trying to get me to go there for some particular reason? Um, Without the Bigfoots getting my attention, I never would have heard or found the Bradshaw Ranch. I can
Oh,
tell you that
wow.
much. I would have not had a reason to. And once I started going to the ranch, things did start progressing. It's a slow process, but they do have a particular process they put you through. And I didn't realize it until I finally sat down and read Linda Bradshaw's section of her book from Merging Dimensions, her and Tom Dongo's book. Everyone should read it. In her section, it talks about all the experiences her and her children had on the ranch. And it talks about how the Bigfoot, in hindsight, it's easy to see it was a process. Neither one of us noticed it was a process during the moments. I only kind of started noticing because I read her book and then started noticing what was happening to me right now. So what it did to her was she started feeding it, right? She was feeding it on a red plate. It would start to leave her gifts of rocks. It would rearrange sticks, draw things in the sand. And from there, it left its body impression in the ground so that she could see it. Then, in hindsight, she realized it was doing that so that she would know how large the creature is, because next it was going to let her see it during the middle of the daytime. So, when she saw the body impression, and there's photographs of it, it was a big creature, and it was laying down with its hands on its chest, with its elbows out to the sides, and you could see the outline of it. And after that, it let her see it during the day, and she referred to this as her big girl, she called it. It was a female, it was pregnant. It had a child. She saw the footprints of the child and the mother, so she assumes it had the child. And it was white. She was very adamant that this was a white Bigfoot. And when I started going out there, I started finding footprints. There was no doubt about it, man. My first day there. I mean, Tom Dongo told me, he's like, yeah, I'll tell you how to get out there, but it's dead. There's nothing happening out there anymore. And I was like, I just want to go, you know, see the place. And man, the first day there, I was blown away. I was like, oh, God, there's so much going on here still. And remind me, we'll have to get into dinosaurs, too, because there's dinosaurs running around out here, which is just the weirdest thing to possibly say out loud and be truthful on. So I started going out there finding footprints. I was like, okay, I'm going to try and feed this thing. I was leaving out like really good organic vegetables, and like, you know, I was trying to get good stuff. It with no interest at all. You know, the food would sit for weeks there. It like nothing would take it. You know, you leave a couple chocolate bars out and they're gone pretty quick. But I was like, all right, I'm missing. I'm not doing what I want to do. And then a friend I met through investigating out here in Monaco, she was like, "Hey, we should try a red plate like Linda used." I was like, that's a really good idea. So we started using a red plate, and they started feeding again. Now they start taking the food because we use a red plate like Linda. I was like, that's kind of crazy. Well, actually, it was a little more intricate than that. We started using the red plate, and then they left like a sign of what they wanted. So I went to check the plate. I had a dedicated exchange area. So I went to check the plate one day, and as I'm walking by, the plate was in a room. I looked through the window in the room, and I see a little green thing on the plate, and I was like, "Oh, that looks like a grape." I was like, "What the heck is on the plate?" So I went in there, and it was actually a piece of polished green aventurine. It's a
Oh,
stone.
wow.
Yeah. Now, the best thing I could think is somebody left that on the ranch somewhere as an offering or fell out of somebody's pocket or something. Like you can get those in crystal shops in Sedona
Yeah.
and stuff. So I didn't think like the Bigfoot brought that there. I think it found that there, and I think it put it on the plate because it resembled a grape. Now, my first thought when I saw it was like, that looks like a grape. So as I sat there, like trying to make it cooler than it was, I'm like, oh, did the Bigfoot give me this cool rock? Like, hey, it looked like a grape. They probably just wanted you to give them grapes. Like, don't make it like.
Yeah.
So I went and bought green grapes. I bought 3 pounds of them, piled them on this plate at sunset, right? Go over to the main part of the house, hang out for a bit, come back a couple hours later. Completely gone.
Oh, wow.
So the other weird thing is, we weren't actually using a plate. It was actually a Tupperware lid, right? It was like a very flimsy thing.
Yeah.
And the grapes were gone, and the plate was exactly where it was. Now, there aren't many animals out there that could have reached the table and like reached up and grabbed it and pulled it off. But if they
Without,
did, the plate wouldn't have been right there.
exactly,
Something
without moving the
like
plate.
vertically. Right, right, right. And so then I was like, okay, we got something going. Like I'm interacting with them now. I'm like, sweet. And then they left me another rock, this big red rock, uh, and some symbols. They drew some symbols in the dirt. So then I thought, okay, I want to try to write to them. So I got a piece of poster board and I left it on the table. And I got these like thin pieces of charcoal they use in art and left those out. And I drew some symbols and things like that. And I left it there. And every time I'd come back and check, it was like smashed around. And I was like, yeah, what is happening in here? I was like, is there wind coming in somehow and moving it? And I would go in there on these real windy days. And I get video. I was like, okay, the wind isn't moving the board. Like the board isn't flying around the room or anything. It's not the wind. And then I thought, it seems like they're frustrated. Why would you come in and I thought, okay, maybe the charcoal I left is too fragile for their big, Bigfoot
Yeah,
hand.
big hands.
Big hand. Yeah, yeah, big hand. So I got sidewalk chalk. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna try something else. So I got a full box of sidewalk chalk, left that on the table. Then I got chalkboard paint. And on the outside of that room, I made a chalkboard on the outside. And then I got another piece of chalk and tied string and nailed it to the wall so that there would always be a piece of chalk hanging by the chalkboard. And I drew, I didn't know what to draw. Like, I don't know how to appeal to Bigfoot. So, I drew an outline of my hand because I was like, that would be cool if they drew an outline of theirs. I drew like a simple version of my face, I look like a cartoon character half the time anyway, so it wasn't that hard. And then there's like some symbols, just like, I didn't know what to put, but I kept it simple. I wasn't writing sentences or anything like that. I was just trying to do things that meant something to me when I did it, hoping they could pick up on that. And I didn't really get much. Things kind of slowed down and died for a few months after that. And I just thought maybe I was wrong this whole time. I don't know. But then the solstice, that seems to be a good day for me. Summer solstice came around, and every year I've always come out here on the solstice and had as many friends come with me. And this last one, we had a group of people out here, and it let me see it during the day, and it wrote a symbol back on the chalkboard. And I'm telling you, I like when I saw the symbol on the chalkboard that it wrote, I felt like I just like won the Super Bowl. There's like
Yeah.
this feeling overcame like such victory. It felt so rewarding. I don't know. I, yeah, I guess I don't know the right word, but it was really overwhelming when that sensation I had that it took the time to write a message back.
Now
That,
I can feel your emotion right now.
and it was like, because it's great. No, dude, I love the encounters I have with them. It doesn't matter, they're over there looking at me, or they breaking sticks, or they're crushing rocks together. That's all awesome. But for them to be like, okay, and right then I
Yeah.
was like, whoa. So what did they write? Obviously, they drew a symbol of a chevron with 3 vertical lines, 2 in it, 1 above it. And man, I didn't know what it was, and we posted on Facebook. People knew what it was right away. It's a symbol from the 1960s from a UFO incident known as the Zamora incident in New Mexico, where a police officer saw this egg-shaped craft landed on the ground, and it had a red symbol drawn on the side. And sure enough, it's that same symbol. So why is a Bigfoot referencing an old UFO incident? Which it gets even weirder, because whatever energy or entity is at the Bradshaw Ranch, it also showed Linda a UFO encounter from the 50s. And she has a picture of it. It's really weird. She was woken up one night, and there was like a movie screen floating in the sky in her front yard, showing a picture just floating in the sky. And she has photographs of it. Like, she took photos of it. You can see it. And the picture it's showing is a UFO, and you can see a telephone pole and like a house. And sure enough, that's a real photo from the 50s. I think it's up in Washington or Oregon.
Oh wow.
Um, but why? So twice now, it's put us through a process. Um, the way it indoctrinates you, I guess, into its little group is,
So my producer just showed me the symbol. So is this
oh,
with a line
yeah,
here, and then one up
one
above.
above it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool.
I mean, so why? Okay, so the process goes: you initially engage with them by befriending them. If you start offering them things, they know you're not trying to trap them or trick them or take advantage of the situation. Then they start reciprocating back with some gifts. From that point, when they trust you enough, they leave their body impression in the ground. And I'm saying this confidently because it happened to both me and Linda, but it happened to Linda, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But the same process happened on the same piece of land. They leave their body impression so that you're not afraid of them when you see them. The one that I encountered was 12 feet tall. Linda's was
Wow.
6.5 feet. Mine was 12 feet tall, and I'm telling you, the first time I saw that body impression, I was like, eesh. Like,
Yeah, that's a
I have
little
seen it.
frightening.
I've seen a bigger one out there. The first one I encountered was 15 to 20 feet tall, and it wasn't all that thrilled that we were around, and it wanted us out of there. Um, and that was overly intimidating for the people I had with me at the time, which you can imagine.
Yeah.
And it also, yeah, no, of course, but it also made it more, I realized I had to be more selective of who I bring with me, because as crazy as it sounds, when the creature shows up, that is not the time for me to leave. I'm trying to understand and study these things. When the creature shows up, that's time for me to go forward toward it. And it's really hard to find people that will let you go toward it in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
They don't want you to. They care. They're your friends. They care about That's like they're.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of that crazy guy too. Like in the middle of the night, I hear a bump, I want to run to it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I got to so Tom Dongo, him and Linda researched the ranch for years, and one of his favorite stories is when they were out there one night and they heard this thing that roared like a lion. And he said they had 7 dogs at that point, and all the dogs jumped up and they ran after the sound. And him and Linda were worried that they would have to go and run around and pick up dog parts. They thought for sure this thing just mauled those dogs. And the dogs all came trotting back. They're just all fine with it. They realized the dogs knew the creature. When they got out there, they were fine with it. They weren't irritated or bugging it or anything. And I finally got to hear that roar. It was just a couple months ago. I was out there. And so I go out there at night alone. I do like to have other people because a witness, co-witness is good, but I definitely go out alone at night. And I go out alone without anything. You have to. If you bring cameras every time, then I'm gonna change this. So I have the weird sunset. If you bring cameras with you every time, you're not gonna have the same experience as you would without the cameras because they know the cameras are there and they
Yeah, I
will
agree.
let you get evidence and pictures, but they want control over when they're gonna do that. You know, they're not trying to put that in your hands. Um, that ranch. Okay, so when I heard the lion roar, I had my camera. I turned it on. I don't have the lion roaring on camera. I heard what sounds like a lion roar. So I turned my video camera on, have it on my tripod, hoping that if it makes another noise, I can capture the noise. And it did. It grunted and groaned a couple times, pretty damn loud. And I have it on camera, and I went back home, put on my computer, turned the volume up so I could try to. And we did get audio of this thing, and I don't know how clear it is yet. You know, as you try and turn the volume up, it's just going to sound like some
Yeah,
sort of noise.
it
But at
sounds
least,
goofy sometimes.
yeah, but at least people will know that, okay, no, there's something there. I'm
Well,
not trying to
100%.
convince you it was a Bigfoot, but there was something there.
100%, yeah, because
And
anytime you take any kind of audio, it
yeah,
doesn't do being there it doesn't
right.
do justice to it.
But in that moment, I captured a lot of my internal thoughts because I was talking myself up to trying to walk in that direction. Like I didn't really think my camera was on. I turned my camera on, right? And then I'm like, all right, like what are you gonna do? Like it's here, it's here. Like men from the boys at this point, like it's that way, my car's that way. And then
Yeah.
you kind of just see my head and the bit of the camera like walk past into the distance where the
Yeah.
noise was coming. So like at least you know I went after it. It was gone by the time I went over there. But yeah, I did manage to capture that kind of that weird moment you have when you're like, am I gonna go toward it or just back to my
Trust
car?
me, I know that moment. I was like,
Yeah,
do I
yeah.
poop my pants or do I run or do I.
It's
What's my
yeah.
choices?
And so the other story that came from the Bradshaws are dinosaurs. And it's like that's too. I was like, that's too much. Like no,
No, it
like
ain't.
just
No, it ain't. Not on Cryptid Quest.
no.
The
It isn't.
Cryptid
No,
Quest
that's
podcast.
absolutely real. Like it's absolutely real. They really are
No,
still
no,
walking
I
around.
believe it. I believe
Oh
it.
my God, yeah. So they saw them on the ranch. A family saw like a two-legged T-Rex raptor type, and the parents even saw it as it went into the trees. They could see its back and its tail. And Linda Bradshaw herself saw like 10 brontosaurus type walking across her front yard. But those, she said they're like 10 to 12 feet tall. They weren't like 30-foot tall ones. They were like little
Oh,
mini
wow.
brontosaurus. So the whole concept to me was like, come on, like it just doesn't seem like that's really happening. Until I found other footprints, fresh in the mud. I mean, I found them both. Brontosaurus tracks, which, I mean, the only way I could describe when I saw them was that their elephants are walking around out here, apparently.
Yeah, it look like
Because,
elephant
I mean,
prints.
well, I mean, my hand is 8 inches from here to here,
Yeah.
and my hand fit in the pad of the foot, and the toes were all around the pad. I mean,
Oh,
it's,
okay.
that big around. And then the T-Rex. It's so funny because I'm trying to say this seriously because it's real, but I'm talking about a T-Rex. So what I do a lot of times is I'll go to the ranch just before, an hour before sunset, and I walk around the property, the surrounding area. There isn't much usually at the ranch house. It's the area around the property. So I'm usually covering the hillsides, looking for anything I can find. And I usually stay into the night and kind of just sit after it gets dark, see if anything comes out, just pay your dues, put your time in kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so this one day I'm there and I'm in the part of the property that used to be the Old West movie set. And it was mostly like grassy, and then there's this dirt patch that I come up on. It's like, there's like a perfect T-Rex track. I mean, I measured it. It's like 21 inches on. It's on my Instagram. Like My Instagram is a baby raven, at a baby raven. So you can go on there and you can see a bunch of stuff. But the T-Rex track is on there. And it's 3 toes, 1 in the back, a giant dinosaur footprint in the dirt. And that was the only night I didn't stay into the evening. I was out there alone. Honestly, I was out there alone, and I saw
don't
that
blame you.
I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Like, I don't need that.
I don't blame you. Oh my
I'll
gosh.
get video, and I'm out of here. Yeah, no, I'm not going to mess with a T-Rex. And like, it just sounds so funny to say, but I mean, that is what happened.
Dude, you know what? A lot of crazy shit happens in this world. A lot of crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and when I say crazy, I don't mean like I'm talking mind-blowing crazy, because there's a lot of stuff out there we don't know about. I mean, there is.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff, and there's more to this world than us humans know about.
So, yeah, I mean, we can only see less than 1% of the existing spectrum. So, I mean, it's mind-blowing when you think. Can you imagine what it'd be like if we could see magnetic waves? How interesting everything would look if we could see electromagnetic waves. That would be crazy.
I'd probably have a heart attack.
Yeah. I think the Bigfoot can see it. If you wanna encounter a Bigfoot, don't use game cameras. I can
No.
tell you now from spending all this time in the field where they are, that if you put a game camera out, they will not appear in that area at all. It's cut and dry. And as much as people hate that, I'm sorry, it's the way it works.
I'll tell you how to encounter a Bigfoot. You sit in the woods of Missouri at 2 a.m. in
Yeah.
October with one arrow in your crossbow, and that's it.
No gun.
No guns. No gun. I had no guns
No,
on me.
no camera.
No
Yeah,
cameras.
yeah.
Nothing. All I had
Yeah.
was my cell phone, and it was on sleep. So because I was sleeping.
Okay.
But yeah.
That is. I mean,
other than
man,
that,
it's the way it is. Yeah.
so man, I'm gonna tell you what.
This has been awesome.
Yeah, this has been a really, really fun and entertaining and informative. And no, it's been informative. You've educated me on a
appreciate
lot
that.
of stuff.
Yeah.
Juergen, is it Juergen? Juergen?
Juergen. Yeah.
Juergen? Sorry, I mispronounced it. Juergen,
Hey, no worries. It happens all the time.
everybody out there, go watch Hoodo Tall 1 and 2. And where can they find you? Where else can they find you if they want to check out your stuff?
Yeah, Instagram is the best way. Out here, I don't always have good reception, so that's the one place I decided to, when I get something real good that day, I throw it up, and it's at a baby raven. And I know we wanted to touch on that real quick. It's kind of just a baby
Go
raven
ahead and
is,
touch on it real quick.
yeah, it's something that, a raven is really wise. I don't consider myself wise, but I hope through experience I'll become wise like a raven. And I wanted to think of a symbol for somebody who has that mindset. And it's like, well, that's simply a baby raven. Through experience, it'll learn to grow and fly and be a raven. So that's kind of where the baby raven thing comes from. Yeah. Those of us that are out here to learn and gain from it.
So what's
become
kind of
something.
cool is I always talk about ravens because I didn't know the facts you said in Hoodo Tall one.
Yeah.
I didn't know about them facts, but I knew they can do like a 7-piece puzzle and they recognize
Oh, yeah.
faces. So
Yeah,
and
yeah, isn't that
it's
awesome?
one of them animals. I'm always like, you never see a raven dead on the side of the road. All
That's
right.
really good.
Well, you know what? It's been a hell of a fun time tonight with Juergen.
Yeah.
And you know what? Everybody out there in the cryptid land, keep it creepy.
Out in the woods where the shadows creep, I'm trying to find the legend that the people keep. Bigfoot's the name, got a story to tell. Footprints in the mud, can't you hear the bell? Whispers in the night, can you feel that chill? Bigfoot on the run, he's a legend, keep it real. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride. Like I'm on a quest, searching for the homie, you know he's the best. Got my camera ready, heightened senses on blast. Snap a shot of Sasquatch, legend unsurpassed. Eyes in the dark, you can't catch what you can't see. King of the woods, living wild and free. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride.